Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats. Our program will begin shortly. Please welcome the chairwoman of the Standing Rock Sioux Tribe, Janet Elkhire.
Good morning. Chante washte nape chiusapi, wia wagatia, imachiapi. With a good heart, I extend a warm handshake to you all today. My Lakota name is Woman with High Honor, and my colonized name is Janet Elkhire. I am the chairwoman of the Standing Rock Sioux Tribe, It is both an honor and a blessing to be here today and to be asked to deliver the opening prayer at today's White House Tribal Nations Summit. Please feel free to stand or sit. To me, it is what is important is what comes from your heart through thanks and prayer. Tankshila Wakan Tanka, Lord, creator of heaven and earth, we thank you for your many blessings. We thank you for this day. We thank you for the many tribal and non-tribal leaders who have come together today to participate in this prestigious event. I ask that you watch over every one of them and their families. We acknowledge today that we must work together in harmony, in good relations and good intentions, that our ancestors did not sacrifice their lives and efforts for us to remain connected to historical trauma, but to move forward in historical healing. Let us remember that we are here today. We are survivors because of them. We remember who you are, and from you, may we remember who we are, that we can remember the importance of the lives of our tribal members and the 7 generations to come. We pray in your holy name, Creator, Tankshila Wakan Tanka, that each of our prayers are heard today and every day. I ask personally for protection of my people from imminent danger to Standing Rock's water supply from the Black Snake. Help those who are in need, those suffering, and those who have addictions to be filled with your Holy Spirit and to be well. Protect those who are here today. Keep them from harm. Let us also remember those who are dearly departed, who once physically embraced these people here today, and let us remember that their spirits must keep us grounded. Forgive us, O Lord, when we stumble or stray from your intended path to be of service. Guide us, keep us in your light. In your holy name we pray. Medakya Wasi. Amen.
Please welcome the Director of the White House Domestic Policy Council, Neera Tanden.
Good morning, everyone. It's really a great honor to be with you here. And as Director of the President's Domestic Policy Council, I have the great privilege of overseeing the White House's policy work on Native affairs. This is critical work for the President, and therefore it is critical work for us. And we are lucky to have our Senior Policy Advisor for Native Affairs, Liz Reese, lead our work. Liz, would you stand up? As I said, it's really an honor to be here with you at the 3rd Tribal Nations Summit of the Biden-Harris administration. The summit demonstrates our commitment to our relationship with tribes, with the President's participation, the Vice President's participation, and really a tremendous participation of the Cabinet and Sub-Cabinet. We are here to truly demonstrate our commitment to ensuring the success of tribal nations and really demonstrate the nation-to-nation relationship. I just want to say, take a moment to say how grateful we are for Secretary Haaland's leadership in not just leading the summit, but her work day to day, month to month, year to year to ensure the success of our relationship and really drive not just the Department of Interior, but agencies across government with White House partnership to essentially make sure we're doing everything we can to ensure the success of tribal nations. As my co-chair of the White House Council on Native American Affairs, I'm proud to work alongside her on these issues. And just to say, she's just been an extraordinary leader and one the president deeply relies on these issues. And that is why, and really her focus has been the nation-to-nation relationship as it has been the president's. And that's what I want to really talk to you about today, because when we think through the nation-to-nation relationship, it really boils down to one word: respect. Respect for tribal leaders, respect for tribal governments, and respect for tribal nations. And that idea is founded on a simple principle, which is that tribal nations are sovereign nations. You as leaders know what's best for your communities. You know what the needs of young people, families, elders. You know much better than the federal government. And that's why it's time for our policies to reflect that. And that is exactly the principle behind the president's executive order that he signed yesterday. The focus there is to usher in a new relationship between tribes and the federal government. And it recognizes that in our past, we've had a relationship that was at best patronizing and disrespectful, and at worst really embraced disastrous policies that very much harmed tribal nations, focused on assimilation and really termination of tribes themselves. And this is why we've tried to have a sharp break. As you know, 50 years ago, our policies began to change. The federal government began to embrace the concept of self-determination and respect for tribes. And this EO builds on that progress. It centers the core wisdom that tribal autonomy is central, because it's about tribal nations' fundamental right to govern, but also to have the resources for tribal governments to do the work they need to do. And that's why these programs, the focus of the EAO is to ensure these programs across the federal government and the new investments we make in infrastructure and the Inflation Reduction Act, that we are really driving agencies to give you as much autonomy as possible, as much flexible funding as possible, as little red tape, as little strings attached as possible. As the president said yesterday, we are committed to working with you to usher in this new era, because recognizing the importance of tribal autonomy is not only good policy, it represents the way in which we address our trust and treaty obligations. Now, a prime example of a program that better respects tribal sovereignty is the Indian Health Service. Having worked on healthcare policy now for much of my career, I know how crucial the Indian Health Service is to tribal communities and how important it is in our healthcare system. IHS works to respect autonomy of tribes and how they run their services, and it is really a model program to ensure that we have self-governing compacts, affording tribes the flexibility to tailor healthcare services to the needs of communities. That is part of why I'm so exceptionally proud of our work to secure historic advance appropriations for the Indian Health Service, which is really just a way of saying that the Indian Health Service should be able to plan, it should be able to fund for years to come. Right now, or in previous years, it has been funded on a year-to-year model. It is the only part of our federal healthcare investments that are funded on a year-to-year model, and that is why it's really critical that we move towards giving IHS the ability to make plans. IHS is not a discretionary program. It is not something that should just be year-to-year. It is an essential program. We like to say that discretionary programs mean you can really choose. We can't really choose with IHS. We can't really choose year to year to fund. We have to fund forever. And IHS is providing essential services, life-saving care to Native people across the United States. And that is why we are proud of moving to this concept of being able to plan for the future, because this is really about keeping our promises to provide vital services. That is why in 2022, President Biden secured an historic $5.1 billion in advance appropriations, the ability to plan in future years for the Indian Health Service. And that is critical funding that we need to ensure continues in the years to come. As a result, the doors of IHS facilities remain open even in the event of a government shutdown. That is really critical because we know that we face congressional threats year to year, month to month often. This historic funding also gives IHS long overdue funding stability and predictability. Indian hospitals can plan ahead, hire doctors, buy supplies, and instead of surviving essentially from paycheck to paycheck from the federal government as institutions, there's real job security for people at IHS doctors, nurses, and staff. We're not done, though. This year, the President's FY24 budget provides an additional $3 billion for the Indian Health Service for a total of $8 billion, really historic funding. Through the Indian Self-Determination Act, Congress recognized the importance of increased tribal decision-making in the nation-to-nation relationship between the United States and tribes. And through this law, IHS works with over 350 federally recognized tribes that now run their own health care. And that really brings us back to the EO, which is from IHS, we have a model in which over 50% of funds in the IHS budget goes directly to tribes to run their own healthcare programs, their own healthcare clinics, based on what they know their communities need. Tribes overwhelmingly have agreed that having the ability to design healthcare systems and clinics that work and servicing institutions that work for you, provide a comprehensive approach to health and wellness is one of the greatest benefits of tribal self-government programs. And it is a model for our EO. It is a way that we are demonstrating. We're pushing agencies to look at this model of funding, one in which there's really co-stewardship, co-managing, co-leadership of programs so that tribal nations receive the funding that they deserve, but also have the power to govern that our nation-to-nation relationship demands. IHS is an incredible example of what's possible when we partner with tribes and allow tribes to take ownership of programs. It's a model that we will, as I said, be driving agency to agency. I know there's more work to do to build on that spirit of collaboration and partnership, and I look forward to partnering with you as well. Just to step back, I think from the perspective of the Domestic Policy Council, we are really proud of the work over the last several years to take on specific issues of concern, but also really infuse our focus on the nation-to-nation relationship across the government, whether it's through how we look at public lands, whether it's how we're investing new dollars from the infrastructure law, the CHIPS Act, the IRA Act, and the Inflation Reduction Act, but it's also fundamentally how we look across government to ensure that we are providing the autonomy that is the basis of respect for the nation-to-nation relationship. And on behalf of the Biden-Harris administration, I really do want to extend my gratitude, my respect, and my thanks for your leadership as we continue our conversations about the best way to move forward in the 21st century with the nation-to-nation relationship between the United States and our tribal leaders. Thank you so much.
Treaties are not a grant of rights to the Indians, but a grant of rights from them, reservation of those not granted.
This Constitution, and the laws of the United States which shall be made in pursuance thereof, and all treaties made, or which shall be made, under the authority of the United States, shall be the supreme law of the land.
Treaties are substantive federal law of equal importance to other federal laws and obligations. Federal employees must acknowledge treaty rights and seek to safeguard them as agencies contemplate action. History teaches us that the best way to serve Native nations is by empowering tribal governments to lead their communities. Federal officials should engage with tribal leaders, seeking their input when shaping policies that impact tribal nations.
This training is a result of the 2021 Tribal Treaty and Reserved Rights Memorandum of Understanding, signed by 17 secretaries, administrators, and senior leaders. This training also aligns with the Presidential Memorandum on Uniform Standards for Tribal Consultation and Strengthening Government-to-Government Relationships. This training, provided to all federal employees, emphasizes the federal trust responsibility and the federal policy of supporting tribal self-determination.
Changes in federal Indian policy over the course of American history acknowledge the failures of the federal government in upholding tribal treaties. As federal employees, it is our responsibility to avoid the wrongs of the past and move forward with a commitment to the federal trust responsibility we have to all tribes, including the protection of tribal treaty and reserve rights. Treaties are, after all, the supreme law of the land.
You've just watched the Tribal Consultation and Treaty Rights training previewed by the OPM director yesterday. We hope you enjoyed this preview, and we look forward to rolling out the full version for the entire federal government in 2024. Please welcome our panel on conservation and habitat protection.
Greetings, everyone, and welcome to the Tribal Nation Summit panel on substance use and mental health in tribal communities. Navi toa Hawi Ampovi, Navi Americana Hawi Elizabeth Reese, Na Nambe Awenge Weang Omu. It's nice to meet you all. My name is Elizabeth Reese. It's also Yampovi in my traditional language, Tewa. I'm from Nambe Pueblo, New Mexico. I think there's some, yes, hello, I'm like, the Pueblos are back there. Oh, hey, guys. Hi, Governor. It's good to see you. I didn't, but thank you all so much for coming. So this panel, for those of you who haven't met me, I've been running around with a chicken without a head for the last 2 days. I'm the Senior Policy Advisor for Native Affairs at the White House on the Domestic Policy Council. And myself, along with the Tribal Affairs Director at the White House Intergovernmental Affairs Office, Rose Petoskey, are part of the team that puts on this event every year. And welcomes you all to Washington, D.C. and decides what the substance of this 2 days is really going to be. So thank you all so much for coming and making this all possible. And feel free to reach out to me anytime when you have questions about the White House's agenda when it comes to Native policy. So now to move on to this panel. So this panel will highlight some of the major progress under the Biden-Harris administration's mental health and substance use disorder agenda. The administration has heard clearly from tribal leaders about the opioid crisis. We know that substance use is also tied to broader concerns with mental health and well-being in our communities, and to questions about how to keep our communities safe. Today, we'll hear from administration leadership on some particular milestones and the path that we're taking on the future when it comes to addressing substance use disorders and behavioral health resources, while also hearing key perspectives from tribal leaders who fight for the health and well-being of their people every day. As this panel might be shorter, we will see how we go in terms of questions, but if there is time, we will have mic runners to answer questions from the audience. I'd first like to allow our tribal leaders to introduce themselves. First, we have Martin Harvier, President of the Salt River Pima Maricopa Indian Community, and then next, quickly, Tony Hilaire, Chairman of the Lummi Nation. Go ahead.
Thank you. Skokshadik, Kamdum, Aniab Chugik, Martin Harvier, President for the Salt River Pima Maricopa Indian Community. I just want to say it's an honor to be part of this panel and the discussion that will take place. And I'll just state in preparing some of my comments, I couldn't help think about decisions that individuals we make, individuals that we'd be talking about, lives that we're talking about. I'll just share with you, I know I'm limited on time, but I'll just share with you, we have a journey to recovery for our men and women of our community that are going through substance abuse. And one afternoon, I was leaving the office and I seen a group of the men. And I went back and I just told them to keep moving forward and what they're doing, make changes in their lives. And I told them, I said, and I think all of us need to think about that in growing up. I know somebody stated their age yesterday. I'll state this month, I'll turn 64 years old. My younger years, I made some decisions that probably weren't good decisions. But I told them the difference between me and you got caught, I didn't. And a lot of times we have to think about that, decisions that we made, and now people that are going through issues, we got to think about that, things that we might be facing ourselves if things would have turned out differently. So grateful for this opportunity to sit on this panel and hear the discussion take place. Thank you for this opportunity.
Ait Squichil, Nostalgia CM. Good morning, my dear friends and relatives. My name is Tony Hilaire. My name is Satsumton, chairman of the Lummi Nation tribe located in Washington State. And just to follow along with my tribal leader, and I guess in a little advice, don't give a tribal leader an open mic. We'll take all the time up if we have to. But what's on my heart today is just asking ourselves, is it our time? Is it our time to really address this issue head on? The challenges between harm reduction and tough love for our people, and are we ready to do this? And if we're not, then we need to go home and apologize to our children. But if we are ready, then we need to step up and work together as partners to really make some good changes in this world. And for us at Lummi Nation, we refuse to accept anything less than what was envisioned for us by our elders and ancestors. And we're going to keep working hard to get us there. We just wanted to come here and let everyone know that we love you all, and especially in this fentanyl crisis that we're in, we have to stick together. And we're looking forward to this conversation this morning and how we can better work together between tribes and the federal government. Haishkasiyam.
Kunda, thank you. So now I'd like to introduce our federal panel. So first, we have Rahul Gupta, Director of the White House Office of National Drug Control Policy. Next, we have Andrea Palm, the Deputy Secretary of the Department of Health and Human Services. And last but not least, Vinita Gupta, Associate Attorney General for the Department of Justice. So now on to our first question for Chairman Hilaire. Could you share some of the substance use and behavioral health challenges in your community specifically, and how the federal government can play an even more supportive and effective role in working with tribes to curb substance use and improve behavioral health?
Yeah, thank you. Really thankful for that question. There's a few things, and first, before we go into what the challenges are, it's really important that we acknowledge and remember the resilience that we have as a people, the foundation and the legacy that's been laid out for us next generation of leaders to get us to where we are today. You know, we have much more than we've had, and yes, we are a people who have overcome genocide and the historical traumas. And it was well said this morning in the opening prayer that we want historical healing, and that's where we're at today. And so, yes, they are challenges, but we're resilient, and we're always going to be here fighting for what we need. And we see it. We see the hope in the children yesterday, and the cultural performance that was up here. So long as we have our culture, our way of life, we're always going to be okay. But we have to match up to the severity of this fentanyl crisis. And so we say all that just to bring up some of the challenges. The first is that these are our relatives. You know, this isn't just a stat or data. It's not just a number. These are the people that we grow up with. These are our mothers and fathers, our children and grandchildren that are dying in an overwhelming amount due to fentanyl overdose. And so that's one. The second is the severity of this issue needs to be risen up to the highest level of government possible. And for example, we lose more people to fentanyl overdose than we do COVID-19 at Lummi Nation. And we declared a state of emergency and a fentanyl crisis. And we believe that the federal government, that President Biden and the administration should declare fentanyl a national emergency so that we can tear down these barriers that are hindering our ability to take care of ourselves. For example, we shouldn't have to compete with our brothers and sisters across this nation just to get what we need to take care of ourselves. And I think the executive order that was signed yesterday is a good step toward that direction. In addition to that, we are in a big challenge is detox and facilities. The Senate Committee on Indian Affairs has been holding hearings, and yesterday some of the federal agencies brought up some of the needs for tribes, but the main thing is having the ability to construct and build the facilities that we need. And for us, we did an immediate drug interdiction on our reservation, started checkpoints, got canine units out there to get as much drugs off of the reservation as possible. And with that came the huge need for harm reduction. We opened up we repurposed a modular and made it a 24/7 stabilization center, an expansion of medication-assisted treatment and our opioid treatment program. And so when we started our drug interdiction, our beds became completely full, which highlights the need for more facilities, treatment access, resources, and especially a secure withdrawal management and stabilization facility. And so that's a huge challenge is being able to build the facilities that we need to take care of ourselves. In addition to that, as we work through addressing the drugs on our reservation, jurisdiction was a huge issue. And I only bring that up, it's related but not. We believe that us as a government, as a tribal government, we carry responsibility. If we're able to help, then we have the responsibility to do so and to give our people that are struggling with addiction a fighting chance. And a part of that is getting drugs off the reservation. And given our geographic area, a lot of jurisdiction issues are coming up. And so we're working with Congress to enact a bill that acknowledges and recognizes tribal sovereignty and jurisdiction. And so those are just a few. This fentanyl crisis is very complex. It takes prevention, intervention, and rehabilitation. We also believe in the need for us to come together. And in Washington State, we hosted a tribal state opioid summit to really bring forward recommendations for Washington State administration and legislation, some fixes that need to take place so we can work better together. In addition to that, our Tulalip tribes in Washington State, shout out to Chairwoman Gobin, who's here today, hosted a national fentanyl summit this year in collaboration with the National Indian Health Board and some of the White House staff and NCAI as well. And from that, gathered a report that really lays out some key recommendations in all of these areas that touch the fentanyl crisis. And so we really, really recommend our tribal leaders to look at that report. It'll continuously be worked on and sent out and communicated across Indian country. Thank you.
All right, the next question is for Director Palm, or sorry, for Associate Attorney General Palm. Sorry, apologies for Deputy Secretary Palm. Given the mission of HHS,
I've been called worse.
This is the challenge with having so much engagement from across the federal government is all of these titles. But so given the mission of HHS and its obvious role in supporting the mental and behavioral health of communities, including tribal communities, can you share how HHS has been working across its different components and working with other agencies and partners on improving mental and behavioral health for tribes?
Thank you for the question. Thank you for having me here today. It's a pleasure to see all of you and have an opportunity to spend some time on this topic. Obviously, the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services is big and deep and wide, and our components all have a connection to behavioral health in some way or other. And so it's really important for me as a leader at HHS to help make sure that we are lifting up and looking across and doing the work of putting the people that we serve, including tribal communities, at the center of what we do. And behavioral health is a critical piece of that work. I think the way we think about making sure that behavioral health is part of healthcare and that it no longer that we no longer accept it as a separate thing is a really critical piece of how, again, we think about people as whole beings and that their needs are well beyond what we think of as traditional healthcare, but that we really need to incorporate the behavioral health pieces. And so whether at HHS, your CMS, your SAMHSA, your IHS, our Administration for Children and Families, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, you have a role to play in making sure that we're doing this behavioral health work in a less siloed, more comprehensive way. And so we've constructed ourselves internally to facilitate that. We have a leadership coordinating council. We have organized around subcommittees, including opioids, including suicide prevention, including some of the youth mental health, some of the larger pieces of this puzzle that we are facing as a department and as a nation. And so we're working very hard to do the work of making sure that our component agencies are working well together. But I also think it's important, while the federal government is larger, obviously, than any of its single parts, practically we can't all be under one roof. but how we think about reaching across to other agencies to do this work is equally important. So whether it's the work that IHS is doing with the Veterans Administration to think about cultural competency in serving Native veterans, or whether it's the way we work across with the Department of Housing and Urban Development when we think about housing insecurity and the cross-section that it has with behavioral health. There are a variety of ways and many more that we should and do think about. Our telebehavioral health agreement with the Department of Interior, so that we are providing that kind of service in BIE schools. Again, opportunities for us to do the work better and differently and break down silos are really important parts of the challenge that the president has given to us under his umbrella of really transforming behavioral health. And we are really happy to be a part of that work and really want to challenge ourselves to do it better. As we think about tribal work specifically, we look at some of our recent initiatives, things like our 988 Suicide Prevention Lifeline, where we have invested about $18 million to make sure that tribal communities have access, again, to culturally competent, informed crisis intervention services through 988, or things that we're doing at CMS or other parts of HHS to really ensure that we are pushing tribal-specific programs and opportunities forward to fold into the larger work that we are doing. But I'll stop there, since I know that there are many others that need to weigh in. There's a lot, and I could go on, but I will refrain.
Thank you. So the next question is for Director Gupta. Could you tell us more about the Office of National Drug Control Policy's role, and in particular, what you guys are doing to help curb substance use and improve mental health for tribes and Native communities?
Thank you, and I want to really recognize the importance of all the colleagues here and the tribal leaders sitting. We've had a lot of conversations previously, and it's so important. You've heard the president and the vice president speak yesterday about the importance of sovereignty, importance of self-determination. It is so critical for this administration and from the White House perspective that we respect that, we move forward when it comes to crisis such as the opioid epidemic and the fentanyl crisis. I could tell you that we know that some of the hardest hit communities in the country right now are your people. And we also know that when we talk about having treatment access, having naloxone, the antidote available, it is one of the areas where it's least dispensed, and we want to change that together. It is fortunate that even a crisis like the fentanyl epidemic and opioid epidemic is actually bringing us together closer in order to solve the problem. So, as I've traveled, especially this year, we were at the Fentanyl Summit, and we were just talking about how jam-packed it was. And Tulalip Reservation that I went to, I mean, not only the summit had over 1,000 participants and overflow, but when I traveled to the hospital, to the clinic, to see people who were being taken care of, I saw where the challenges were there in real life. Similarly, at the Tana O'odham Nation that we traveled to, and I have drove with the Shadow Wolves themselves and seen the work that they do in partnership with the federal law enforcement and HIDA, it is critical. I've got two messages that I want to convey. First, we heard you at the summit on opioids about the need for more coordination, the need to get more responsive in terms of cutting the red tape, and I think you've seen the president sign the executive order as a result of that. It is critical that as partners, we take that seriously. In addition to that, when I was at the Tulalip Reservation, I was aghast because there you were paying $80 a kit for naloxone. And when we went back, we had conversations with our state colleagues, and guess what? Today, you're paying zero. because those federal resources are now flowing through the state to you. And we want to hear more about that, because one thing we can do is help solve these issues when they come up, but it's difficult when we are not aware. So please reach out if there are challenges like that. Second message is, substance use disorder and addiction is a lot more than just treatment, right? It's about recovery, it's about housing, it's about transportation, childcare, economic development, job, education, so much more. And that's where the President's National Drug Control Strategy really calls for an approach that is beyond only treatment. And we work in my office as a coordinating body to make sure that we're harmonizing all of those aspects. So we want to think like that. We've recently talked to, big companies like Google are now recovery-friendly workplaces, and as well as small businesses all across the nation. We want to make sure that more people have that economic opportunity to not just be able to live and survive, but actually do well and thrive. So with that, I will say that please reach out, and we're happy and thrilled to be here.
Thank you. Our next question is for Associate Attorney General Gupta. As we know, many tribal communities are struggling with the impact of substances on their communities, as we've also heard affirmed by our panelists so far, and that it's tribal governments who are often on the front lines of the work to address these challenges. Can you tell us about the work of the Department of Justice to support tribal courts as they navigate this crisis, and any of the promising practices that you may have seen?
Sure. Let me just start by saying what an honor it is to be here among all of you today. Thank you for coming to this meeting in Washington. We know we have so much left to do and so much work to do and things to learn from. And it is learning and hearing from all of you that we are actually able to adjust what we are doing wrong and able to fill gaps in a way that supports tribal solutions for tribal problems and supports and uplifts tribal sovereignty. So thank you. I'm also so honored to be sharing the stage with leaders who've truly committed their careers to trying to get at these very entrenched problems, which seem to have become worse with new emerging faces to it. As somebody who has family members who have cycled in and out of jail because of substance use, addiction, and co-occurring mental health disorders, this is a set of issues that hits very close to my heart and home. And I know that as a country, we have so much work to do to actually improve access to services, and that for tribal nations, the lack of access and the barriers that exist, the lack of funding and support and infrastructure is that much worse. And so we know that we are not here just to lift up best practices, but also to understand that this is an urgent crisis. It is one the pandemic made worse in many of our communities, and that we have a lot of work ahead. I will say that as we think about, tribal solutions to tribal problems and think about how the federal government can support tribal solutions, I traveled to the Mille Lacs Band of Ojibwe in Minnesota. It was early summer, and then to Alaska in the early fall, where I got a frontline view of the ways in which the healing to wellness courts are operating in different communities, but also some of the real challenges and needs still in support. The Justice Department is obviously in the fentanyl crisis doing everything that we can to cut off the supply chain, cartels in Mexico and companies in China, et cetera. But we are also taking what I heard very loudly and clearly, the kind of prevention, intervention, recovery, treatment approach too. And we have to support the whole bandwidth, and it won't be done through the Justice Department alone. It will be done in coordination with all of the agencies and many more here at the federal government. But the Healing to Wellness Court model is one that I think it was incredibly inspiring to see this model at work in different communities. It's tailored in different tribes, and we have to obviously be recognizing the need to support the kind of unique tribal needs around the country, so it's gonna look different in different places. But these healing circles that take a very comprehensive approach to drug testing, to trying to reunify families that have been hit hard by addiction and maybe where families have been separated because of violence related to addiction and substance use, and seeing the long-term engagement that was really, it's resource intensive, it is people intensive, it is leadership intensive, but to hear some of the incredible success stories of families that have traveled very painful and difficult journeys, but have been reunified, and then the continuous kind of support even at the back end when families are reunified, understanding the acute needs and stresses that people have. And so the Justice Department is providing a lot more funding to support these healing to wellness courts. I'm actually eager to share the stage with two leaders whose tribes are actually getting the pretty substantial support now from the Justice Department to support more comprehensive approaches to these issues. The Salt River, Pima, Maricopa Indian community and Lummi communities we've got different courts that we're supporting, and Lummi community and the tribe, we're supporting your DUI courts to be able to provide and reduce recidivism that's related to alcohol dependency. In Salt River, it's the holistic network of resources to support our young people through community involvement and recovery. We also, and I'll just close out by saying this, VAWA gave us important tools that the Justice Department is working to implement, and we've done a lot of tribal consultations to make sure that we can implement it in a trauma-informed, culturally appropriate way. And so we've been able now to provide much more funding for special tribal criminal jurisdiction related to crimes that are often fueled by substance use issues, but to take not just kind of the enforcement or intervention approach, but to be able to support prevention models through our VAWA implementation. And we are now kind of having heard from all of you, because of the different grants that we have at the Justice Department, created a one-stop shop that for tribal grants specifically, and it's about to go live in a couple of weeks. I hope all of you will consider applying to have these funds to support the models that are working in your communities. We're also doing piloting and trying to support new models that tribal leaders are coming up with to be able to support recovery and healing and hope. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So our next question is for President Hilaire. Could you please comment on the role and importance of traditional medicine and indigenous knowledge in the work to improve behavioral health for Native communities?
Yeah, thank you for that question. We are self-determining, and it's great to see that the executive order was signed and an acknowledgement of self-determination. We know how to take care of ourselves as a people, and we know and acknowledge the need for trauma-informed care, and it's a way of merging the much-needed healthcare services to our people, especially those that are struggling with substance abuse and mental health and the addictions and negative aspects of this world. We really believe that the 1115 waivers need to be addressed, as well as the create some sort of reimbursement model for traditional healing practices that will allow us tribes the ability to support these practices. It's much needed, and it really comes down to trust. And it was mentioned a couple of times already during the summit. You know, we're overcoming this historic trauma and the genocide that has happened to us, and our need to decolonize, and it takes a lot of time. But given our track record, given the amount that we do across the nation, it should be a no-brainer to trust that tribes know how to take care of ourselves, and so that's one. And we really believe that the history of our people pre-treaty, it shows just how strong we are, and our ability to continue that way of life while we're also fighting for our treaty rights, and the ongoing threats to our way of life can be very challenging. And just real quick, I wanted to acknowledge Councilman Nick Lewis. He's the Lummi Nation council member, and as well as the vice chair on the National Indian Health Board, chair of the Northwest Portland Area Indian Health Board, and newly elected to NCAI secretary. Everything that's being talked about tonight, right now, in regards to the summits and bringing everyone together, it it's a heavy lift, and it takes a lot of great leadership. And so I wanted to recognize him as well. And everything that's being said from the fellow panelists here, we do need to work together and understand each other. That's one of the best things we can do is take the time to just be together. And that way, hopefully, for our next generations, we'll be able to change the world for the better. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next question is, well, the same question for President Javier. So tell us about the work of traditional medicine, about the importance of traditional medicine, and then also how that integrates into questions about the social determinants of health that I know that you've been working on.
Appreciate that question. First of all, I just wanted to, again, just thank the Biden-Harris administration for their commitment in this area of health and substance abuse nationwide. You know, and I emphasize nationwide because, as the good chairman said here, you know, a lot of the things that he mentioned are the concerns that we have in our community. And I'll just also state, I had 30 Canadian chiefs in our community a couple of weeks ago, and they asked of some of our greatest concerns, and those concerns was substance abuse. And after talking with the chiefs, they all said the same things you're experiencing here, we're experiencing in our nations. So it's not something, you know, that it's just the tribes are facing here. All tribes are facing this, and it's truly an issue that we need to work harder at. And again, I really appreciate the Biden-Harris administration, their commitment. And I was also grateful for the signing that took place yesterday, because a lot of the issues that tribes face is just applying for grants and getting the funding they need to start the programs. So it was good with the signing yesterday. Hopefully that process will make it easier for tribes to apply and get grants that will help in certain areas. And in saying that, you know, we just think everything starts with our youth. It's truly important that we have programs for our youth in our communities. In our community, we have youth services, we have our recreation department, we have the Boys and Girls Club. So in having these programs here, we also made sure that culture was part of it. It's so important to have culture part of any of your programs as far as our young people. It's important to know that they know who they are. At some point in their life, they're going to ask the question, who am I? They need to know. And I'll just share, yesterday, I ran into Cherokee Nation Chief Hoskin, and I thanked him because at the last summit, he sat up here, and he talked about their language program. And when I left here, I went back to our community, and I said, you know, I really enjoyed listening to the Cherokee Chief talk about what they're doing and how important that is on language. Because it really is. It ties us to who we are. And so in going back, and what he emphasized, what I heard was 25 years from now, those youth that are just starting these programs will say, I'm truly grateful for the leadership back then that made the commitment that we now have our language that is strong. And that's what we have to do as far as the cultural part of our community, is make sure the culture and the language is part of all the programs that we have in our communities, to make sure, again, that our youth know who they are. But everything really, we need to start with our young people in our community. But I also wanted to talk about when somebody commits a crime, the deferred prosecution with an option for rehabilitation instead of incarceration. That's so important. You know, again, I heard yesterday one of the elders say, when you see people that are having substance abuse, do we throw them away? No, we shouldn't throw them away. You know, unfortunately, somebody introduced them to whatever substance they're addicted to now, and I'm sure they don't want to be in that situation, but I just feel like when you have an addiction, you feel like you need that to be normal, and they're not normal. But do you throw them away? No. They're part of our family. They're part of the community, like was mentioned, and we need to make sure that we treat them with love and respect when we see them, and try to get them the help that we need. And also with our youth, we have a program called Diverting Our Teens. It's for those that are going through probation, or even family members that want their teens to go through a program, the different departments, and come and talk to them. Even our Department of Corrections takes them through, and see what it's like. If you commit a crime and you're incarcerated, this is what it's going to be like. It's not a scared straight program, but it's something that kind of opens their eyes that maybe I got to change the way that I'm living right now. So those are some of the programs that we're offering. But also, I think it's important for those that are going through programs. We have a Journey to Recovery for our substance abuse and alcohol. When they complete those programs, we've created a little village next to our community of tiny homes. And it's kind of a halfway house for them to get back on their feet before they go back into that same environment that put them into the program. But we built that there specifically. Our tribal council wanted to make sure that they were close to the government campus there, access to programs, to employment, so that it would help them in getting back on their feet. So doing things like that is important of healing our members. And also, I'll just say, as tribal leaders, such as you are looked at up here. You're looked at as a leader. One of the things that we have done as a tribal council is involve those individuals that are going through the program to be part of programs that we have in our community. If, example, the last Thanksgiving, or maybe we shouldn't say Thanksgiving, Giving Thanks Day, we handed out turkeys. And you know what? We invited those members of our Journey to Recovery to be there with council leaders to hand out those turkeys. And it makes them feel good that they're alongside the leaders of the community. And hopefully that helps them too, again, in helping them in their program to wellness. So I really think a lot of what we do is important. And I'll just say right before the pandemic, I know I'm short on time, we were looking into trauma as we were talking about historical trauma. And I'll share with you, there was a quote, and I'm not sure if it was the chairwoman Wilma Mankiller. I'm not sure if it's her quote or whose quote. But it was a quote that went something as Native Americans, we cannot see the future with tears in our eyes. And when I heard that, part of me felt like, you know what? We got to quit crying about what happened in the past and look to the future. But I don't think that's what that meant after thinking about it. Because why do we still cry? And that's part of the historical trauma that I think is important for all of us as tribes to try to find out, why do we still cry? Why do we still do things that we know aren't right, but we still do it? And some of that has just been passed down from generation to generation, but we need to find out why. And I think that's important. And I think that's why these programs are so important. Again, I want to thank everybody that's up here and their role that they're playing in helping us as tribal communities. So appreciate the time. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'd just like to also take a moderator's prerogative for a second to thank Chairman Javier for sharing that story in particular about the conversation you had with Chief Hoskin last year. That is also something that, as some of the organizers of the conference, we really hope that's what happens as well at this summit, that this isn't just an opportunity for you all to partner and build relationships with federal leaderships, but also with one another, and to share best practices, take them back to your communities, to keep building and growing and developing the things that your communities really need. So our last question will be for Deputy Secretary Palm before we will open up to audience questions. So please, if you have a question, start thinking of it now. So following up on what we have just heard about the importance of traditional medicine and this sort of holistic approach to health, how is HHS working to address social determinants of health and to support better health outcomes in this holistic way?
Thank you for the question. I'll say a couple things. One, it sort of goes back to what one of the chairmen said at the beginning, that these are our family, these are our relatives, these are our sisters, our brothers. And I think when you think about the social determinants of health, it is, and you think of it in that context, it is not rocket science that we are influenced well beyond what we think of as traditional health. And I think it's really important that this concept is, it has come to the fore in a way that it is, again, reminding us that we need to think more holistically about the work that we do at the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, and more broadly, again, in connection with other parts of the federal government, so that we are really putting the people that we serve at the center of what we do and wrapping around in whatever way that person comes to us with whatever those needs are. And they're going to live outside of the boundaries or the jurisdiction of any one of our programs or departments. And so how we challenge ourselves to think in a social determinants way, I think is really critical to cracking the nut on some of these really tough problems that we're all working on together. And so for us, we have the privilege at HHS of having a number of components that are important as we think about social determinants and health and wellness. And so our kids and families programs, our substance abuse mental health programs, our more traditional healthcare programs, and then of course the critical component of our Indian Health Service who help the rest of us do the work for our tribal communities differently and better. And I think you can see that in, for example, the partnership between IHS and CMS to think about the incorporation and the potential for reimbursement for more traditional healing methods, beyond, again, what we think of as traditional clinical medicine. And CMS is working on a framework that we will certainly want to do consultation on, and we'll look forward to engaging all of you on to think about how we incorporate in the same ways that tribal health programs and urban Indian health programs, some IHS work in trying to move beyond sort of traditional clinical interventions to incorporate in a reimbursable way traditional healing and traditional medicines, so that, as Vanita said, we're facilitating tribal solutions to tribal issues. And so that is one example where we are trying to think a little differently about the ways in which we incorporate, beyond our traditional way of thinking about how we get to solutions. I think the other thing that I would highlight, if I might, is IHS's work in the Produce for Prescription program. I think we all understand how nutrition, how food insecurity is connected to health and wellness, and traditional foods from that perspective as well. And so we're working to push some money into these kinds of programs to facilitate really bringing to the conversation in a traditional healthcare setting the importance of nutrition and food security, to try to get, again, at a different social determinant of health in a more comprehensive way. And so we are trying to think innovatively, creatively, the ways in which we can bring to bear our different levers within HHS to make sure we are lifting up and putting people at the center of what we do. I think, if I might, we are anxious to sort of facilitate additional conversations about traditional healing, understanding that it is a holistic way in which we need to work with you all to approach your communities. And so we're very excited for what will be the second annual Traditional Medicines Summit. The White House Council on Native American Affairs will host that for us next year, and we really do look forward to engaging tribal leaders, traditional healers, other members of your community, and making sure that that event, the agenda for that event, really facilitates a deep conversation about how we think about this work moving forward, so that we at HHS and other parts of the government can be responsive and do the work that we need to do to meet your communities where they are, as it is seen through more traditional and more holistic, more methodologies that really incorporate the social determinants. So I'll stop there, but thank you so much.
All right, thank you so much. So now we have just a few minutes for questions, probably only 2 is my guess. But I'll now ask Tony Dearman and Joanna Blackhair to help identify tribal leaders with questions for the panel, and then take them a microphone.
Bonjour. Nijia na shinabeduk, Gijaban Quetindishnikas, Moka Kijika Winnie Bacon Dunchaba. Niwi et the Bungi Jagna Shimoan. Good morning, tribal leaders. My name is Robert Van Zyl. I'm the tribal chairman of the Secaucus Chippewa tribe of the state of Wisconsin. I agree with everything you're saying 100%. This is my issue. What happens to these people that fall through the cracks through the judicial system, the courts, and these other, we need to get the towns, the cities, and these municipalities and the court system to work with us instead of competing with us or who's gonna pass the buck on who. We need to be able to, if somebody wants to go into treatment today, we should be worried about getting them into treatment today instead of worrying about who in the hell is gonna pay for it. I apologize for my English, but I just want you to know that I think what you're trying to attempt to do is we need to have these states and these counties have some sort of a cooperative agreement. The court systems have to work with our court systems. Our sovereignty is just as strong as the state or the county or these municipalities. We have to work together. If we don't work together, all you're saying is fluff. Thank you.
Thank you for the question. I think, would Associate Attorney General Gupta like to talk about some of the work across jurisdictions that I know the Department of Justice is involved in?
Yeah, I mean, thank you for what you said. I totally agree that if we are working in silos and there's the federal government supporting tribal solutions and these healing to wellness courts, for example, but states and counties are not respecting that structure or are not working together in a coordinated fashion, we're just undermining all of our goals here. And so I think we have a lot of work to do in this area. And it is something that I will take back to see what can we do at the Justice Department to help create fora, convening areas to actually lift up these healing to wellness courts and to figure out how can states and localities and municipalities, think about these courts and respect the tribal solutions while making sure that they are both supportive or that there's, we're speaking to each other and not working at cross purposes. I totally agree that without that, we will be foundering and won't be able to achieve our collective goal. Thank you.
Governor Stephen Earl Lewis, Gila River Indian Community. Great panel, amazing tribal leadership up here. But I want to bring to your attention a public health emergency that is happening in real time now, back in Arizona. There's a widespread Medicaid scam resulting in the worst case of fraud in our state's history, having unlicensed, predatory, sober living homes preying upon our tribal members, luring them to these homes and exploiting their addictions in a massive fraud scheme that is resulting in kidnapping, human trafficking, and death. This is an ongoing humanitarian crisis that needs an all-of-government approach, including federal agencies to aid the state. The state is unable to address and stop this ongoing exploitation of tribal members in our state of Arizona. In fact, these predatory agencies are even recruiting and kidnapping tribal members from surrounding states as well. So the state of Arizona is unable to address this, and we need federal support, both in enforcement and also we need resources, just as as the consensus of this audience is, for support and for resources for on-reservation detox, for all those wraparound services and transitional housing that is needed in a critical, drastic way right now. Doctor, we sat on a panel at the Indian country's first opioid summit as well, and this situation is deteriorating by the month, by the week, and by the day. So on behalf of the other 22 tribes in Arizona and other tribes and other tribal members and our relatives that are affected, I lost a cousin in one of these sober living homes who was left to die. What do I tell her children? We need help. We need help from the federal government yesterday. I pray that, and from the bottom of my heart as a tribal leader, but also as a relative who was lost, and my tribal leaders in Arizona have lost loved ones and tribal members as well, and there is an ongoing count of missing tribal members as well. So please hear my humble comments. This needs to be addressed. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. We unfortunately we probably won't have time to get a full response to that question, but I think the question is sort of directed at the entire federal panel, and I know that this is something that we are tracking and prioritizing, and that we will collaborate and speak with you further about afterwards. And with that, so I really just want to thank all of the panelists for being here today, and also, of course, all of the tribal leaders for being here today. And thank you for being here for this panel. And that's it.
Aishka. Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats at this time. Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats at this time. Please welcome to the stage the Administrator of the Federal Emergency Management Agency, Deanne Criswell.
All right, good morning, everybody. It's such an honor to be able to participate with everybody today for the 2023 White House Tribal Summit. I first just want to thank the Biden-Harris administration for continuing this important convening and for the continued commitment to working government to government with all tribal nations. Today, I'm really proud to reflect on the progress that we at FEMA have been making over the past year to continue to build the FEMA that Indian Country needs and deserves. Together, we have made incredible strides, but we do have a lot of work yet to do. We want to be able to make sure that we at FEMA are living up to our treaty and trust responsibilities. This morning, I do want to take an opportunity to update you on some of the work that we are doing to better meet the needs of tribal nations throughout Indian Country. First, I'm going to talk about the new approach we are taking to protect tribal nation sovereignty. Second, I'll briefly explain the work that we are doing to improve access to FEMA resources for tribal nations. And last but not least, I'll tell you more about the work that we are doing to ensure you always have a seat at the table. So let me start with our new approach. FEMA is fully committed to supporting and strengthening the sovereignty of tribal nations and protecting your cultural heritage. Today, I'm excited to announce updates to our FEMA's recovery policies that will reflect that support. First and foremost, FEMA will now accept tribal nations' self-certified damage assessments, scope of work for restoration, and estimated costs for traditional tribal residences or ceremonial buildings. We know that we, as a federal agency, are not always equipped to appropriately understand the cost of repairing pueblos, longhouses, or other traditional buildings because our modern standards don't take your traditional knowledge or methods into account. This change, it reflects feedback that we have heard directly from tribal nations and is designed to better assist you and your tribal citizens in repairing traditional homes and ceremonial buildings. We will also no longer require site inspections, photos, site maps, or specific location details of damage that has been done to tribal sacred sites to ensure that your culturally sensitive data and locations remain protected. We're excited to implement these updates to further support Indian Country and strengthen your sovereignty. Second, I want to talk about how we are working to increase accessibility to FEMA programs, tools, and services for tribal nations who need them. We have heard during many of our consultations this year that there was confusion over which roadways on tribal lands were eligible to be repaired through FEMA public assistance funding. This was a big roadblock, both literally and figuratively, for tribal nations who need vital roadways repaired during and after a disaster. So I'm excited to say that we can now clarify that all of these roads, whether they are BIA or DOT built or maintained, are all eligible under our public assistance program. And we have also updated our documentation process for Memorandum of Understanding and mutual aid agreements to clarify your eligibility for mutual aid reimbursements when you help a fellow tribal nation or non-tribal government during a disaster. And thanks to all of your feedback, we have also been working to improve our tribal nation grant programs to ensure that they are meeting the needs of your individual nations. I'm also really excited to announce the launch of our new FEMA Tribal Affairs Hub, something else that you have all asked for. This new hub is going to serve as a one-stop shop where you can learn more about our grants, find information about the tribal declaration process, and even register for our 9th annual Tribal Nations Training Week. All you have to do is search FEMA Tribal Affairs Hub online and you will find this critical new resource. All of these updates to our policies, to our resources, to the hub, they were all driven by conversations with all of you. We would not have been able to make these adjustments without your feedback, which leads me to my third update, how we are working to ensure that you always have a seat at our table. In 2024, FEMA will increase the tribal nation participation in our public assistance working sessions and steering committees to ensure that your voices are always heard and your input is included continuously. We are working to hire more staff from Indian Country while also building tribal awareness and cultural sensitivity across our workforce. And I am also excited to announce that this year began the important work of updating the Tribal Disaster Declaration Guide. This is a pathway for your nations to request a federal disaster declaration from the President to access the disaster relief funding. My team and I, we are going to be providing updates on the progress to the Tribal Declarations guidance and seeking additional input at our upcoming breakout session, which is just across the hall and will begin at 10:50 in the library. I hope to see many of you there to wrap up a productive year of working in our government-to-government manner to strengthen your needs for nations in the next 7 generations. I'm really excited and looking forward to this coming year of new ideas, as well as meaningful conversations. And you do have my sincere commitment that we at FEMA will continue our hard work to become the agency that Indian Country needs and deserves. I want to thank you again for the opportunity to speak with all of you today, for sharing your experiences, your expertise, and your inputs. I hope you have a great rest of your summit, and I look forward to hopefully seeing some of you at our breakout session later today. Thank you very much.
Please welcome to the stage the Commissioner of the Social Security Administration, Kilolo Kijakazi.
Do I have your permission to speak? Thank you, and good morning, everyone. I'm Kilolo Kijakazi, Acting Commissioner of the Social Security Administration. I want to thank the Biden-Harris administration for hosting this 3rd White House Tribal Nation Summit. I am proud to be part of this convening for tribal leaders and administration officials to work together. SSA is committed to working with everyone here and to developing solutions to challenges that tribal communities are facing. The programs we administer pay $1.4 trillion to over 71 million people each year. This includes seniors, working age adults with long-term disability, and over 4 million children. The programs, each week, we provide in our 1,500 offices across the country. We provide services to over 500,000 people, and even more by phone and by our website, ssa.gov. However, barriers remain for tribal members in accessing our services and programs, both in person and digitally. We are working to reduce these barriers to ensure as many people as possible receive the Social Security benefits and Supplemental Security Income, or SSI payments, for which they are eligible. When I assumed the position of acting commissioner, I was surprised that an agency as large as SSA and with such extensive programs did not have an office focusing on tribal nations. Therefore, in 2022, we established the Office of Native American Partnerships. Richard Litzy, an enrolled member of the Muskogee Creek Nation, is the director of the office, and Renee Ferguson, an enrolled member of the Cherokee Nation, is the deputy director. This office has accomplished an amazing amount in 1 year. My colleagues and I have held listening sessions and consultations with tribal leaders and members across the country. We met with tribal leaders at the Spokane Tribe of Indians in Washington State. We held listening sessions in urban Indian centers in Chicago, San Francisco, and Kansas City. We held listening sessions at national conferences of Native Americans in Anchorage, Alaska, and New Orleans. We participated in a national consultation in Cherokee, North Carolina, and a consultation with the Tribal Council of the Oglala Sioux Nation in Pine Ridge, South Dakota. After each visit, we conduct follow-up actions. For example, after the listening session in Anchorage, we developed a pilot to improve service in remote parts of Alaska. Under this pilot, we flew SSA employees to 3 tribal health facilities in underserved tribal communities. Within a few hours, we served more than 200 people. Without this service, these individuals would have had to travel by boat and plane to receive services from SSA. Our White House fellow, Dr. Brian Smith, a cardiologist, accompanied us to Pine Ridge. He remains in contact with tribal leaders and has arranged to return to conduct a listening session to better understand the health disparities they face and to provide health screenings while he is there. We are already making great progress on the implementation of our FY 2024 Tribal Action Plan based on feedback from tribal consultations and listening sessions. For example, where broadband has recently been expanded in tribal nations, we are interested in extending video connectivity to provide customer service to our tribal members. In addition, we are implementing our agency's first ever Native Language Action Plan. We also made a research grant to a tribal college as part of our Retirement and Disability Research Consortium. And we are recruiting from tribal colleges and universities for students to apply for positions at SSA. We want to meet with tribal leaders to hear about any concerns that you may have. And we also want to schedule time after the summit to follow up with you and your council leaders so we can continue to work directly on improving access to your programs and to our programs. To that end, please join me in the next breakout session and SSA will be meeting in the Rachel Carson room in the basement so that we may hear from you, exchange ideas, and highlight where we need to work across governments for solutions. We also welcome other federal agency officials who are interested in attending as well. Thanks so much. You take care.
Please welcome to the stage Attorney General Merrick Garland.
Thank you. It's an honor to join this year's Tribal Nations Summit, which is my third as Attorney General. Thank you to President Biden for bringing us together and to Secretary Haaland for hosting us at the Department of Interior. I'm especially thankful to the tribal leaders who have been participating in this summit for the past 2 days. I know you have had time, and I know you have had to take time from your governance duties at home to be here. We appreciate your time and your commitment to the open and honest dialogue that we know is essential to our shared success. To that end, I want to provide you with some updates on the Justice Department's work over the past year on critical issues that are unique to tribal communities, as well as how our broader work is taking into account tribal interests. First, I want to reaffirm that the Justice Department's approach to our work together with tribal communities continues to be guided by the core values of respect, humility, and honesty. We know that the strength of our government-to-government partnerships is critical to our shared future. Second, I want to provide an update on a case that I discussed during last year's summit. I said then that the Justice Department had filed a lawsuit against the owners and operators of a hotel and bar in South Dakota for violating the Civil Rights Act of 1964 by discriminating against Native American customers. As alleged in our complaint, the defendants both prevented Native Americans from booking rooms at the hotel and made public statements discouraging Native Americans from setting foot on the business's property. That kind of conduct is obviously unacceptable. It is reminiscent of a long history of prejudice and exclusion that Native American communities have faced. Last month, we announced that the Justice Department had successfully obtained a consent decree. The decree requires the hotel, bar, and individual defendants to issue a formal apology, and it stops one of those individuals from serving as an officer, exercising any management duties, or setting foot on the premises for 4 years. Moreover, our work to implement new policies, training, and a complaint process at that hotel and bar is ongoing. As I said last month, the Justice Department will continue to work alongside Native American communities to fulfill the promise of equal justice under law. I want to spend the rest of my time with you providing updates on the department's work in partnership with tribal leaders and members to improve public safety in tribal communities. Central to that effort is our work to provide support to tribal justice systems and tribal law enforcement. That is why I am now pleased to announce an important development in the partnership between the U.S. Marshals Service and tribal law enforcement. The U.S. Marshals Service has developed a legislative proposal to formalize its role in enforcing tribal violent felony arrest warrants. This would expand the practice that the Marshals Service has piloted over the last year to serve tribal warrants at the request of and in close coordination with tribal law enforcement and the Department's Office of Tribal Justice. This effort has successfully targeted extremely dangerous offenders. We believe that expanding it and formalizing it will help to make tribal communities safer. This development also responds to a recommendation made just last month by the Not Invisible Act Commission, urging the Marshals Service to recognize tribal warrants as they do state and local warrants. As another part of our effort to deepen the partnership between federal and tribal law enforcement agencies, we have expanded our Tribal Access Program. This program is an important tool for empowering tribal law enforcement with access to the crime information they need to keep people safe. We now support 132 tribes and more than 450 tribal government agencies through this program. The Justice Department has also continued to put its grant-making authorities to work to help strengthen tribal justice systems and tribal law enforcement. This year, the Office of Violence Against Women, the Office of Justice Programs, and the COPS Office provided more than $269 million, including over $70 million for the Tribal Victim Services Set-Aside Formula Program. In addition, these funds have gone toward improving the handling of child abuse cases, combating domestic and sexual violence, supporting tribal youth programs, and strengthening victim services in tribal communities. Another important milestone in our work together this year was the launch of the Alaska Pilot Program, which was established by the 2022 Violence Against Women Act reauthorization. As many of you know, the program enables designated Alaska tribes to exercise special tribal jurisdiction, criminal jurisdiction, over non-Indians who commit certain crimes in their villages. The launch was possible because of the department's close coordination and cooperation with Alaska tribes. I know that our ongoing partnership is key to making the program a success. We have also continued to confront the persistent and unacceptable violence that Native American communities and families have endured. Over the past year, we have significantly increased the number of assistant U.S. attorneys dedicated to Indian country prosecutions. And the FBI has increased its investigative resources in some of the Indian country field offices that were in the most need of personnel. We have also dedicated more funding to FBI Safe Trails task forces to build on the success they have had in bringing together agencies, including tribal police departments, to combat public safety threats, violent crime, and drug trafficking. As part of our work together to improve public safety in tribal communities, we remain committed to addressing the crisis of missing or murdered Indigenous persons. In June 2023, the Justice Department announced the creation of a new Missing or Murdered Indigenous Persons Regional Outreach Program. That program will employ 5 assistant United States attorneys and 5 coordinators across the United States with the express mission of preventing and responding to these horrific tragedies. The FBI also deployed Operation Not Forgotten across 10 field offices from July through September of this year. That operation dedicated more than 40 agents, analysts, and specialists to investigating cases of missing women and children in Indian country. It has already yielded results. Operation Not Forgotten has led to successful indictments, identification of unidentified victims, and the recovery of 1 child victim. Another area that requires our close coordination is responding to the fentanyl crisis, which is devastating communities in Indian country and across the United States. I know that many of you are working every day on the front lines to confront the fentanyl epidemic and save lives. The Justice Department is committed to working with you to provide tribes with information and resources to combat this deadly drug. The DEA has been engaged in numerous cases in tribal communities in coordination with tribal law enforcement. And just one example of that work, in April, the DEA and FBI, working with the BIA, the Colville Tribal Police, Kalispell Tribal Police, and other law enforcement entities, conducted a multi-state operation. That action resulted in 17 arrests, 12 seized weapons, and the seizure of more than 160,000 fentanyl-laced pills, 80 pounds of methamphetamine, and other illicit drugs. Among the drugs we seized were several thousand of the rainbow-colored fentanyl-laced pills that the cartels design to attract young people. In addition to coordinating our law enforcement efforts, the Justice Department is also focused on supporting education and awareness efforts, as well as prevention, treatment, and recovery. DEA's Operation Engage has facilitated programs for tribal youth, focusing on increasing drug prevention and awareness. And our Bureau of Justice Assistance has provided training sessions for tribal law enforcement, judges, and public safety personnel on our shared work to address fentanyl poisoning, including on the use of Narcan for fentanyl overdoses. I want to thank you all for being part of this year's Tribal Nations Summit. More than that, I want to thank you for your commitment to working as partners to improve the safety and well-being of Indian communities. Your feedback and our ongoing dialogue inform so much of what we do as a department because we know that tribes are navigating circumstances and complexities that can often only be understood through on-the-ground experience. This was made very clear to me in August when I went to Alaska and joined a roundtable with representatives of Alaska Native organizations in Anchorage. I had also planned to visit the Alaska Native villages of Huslia and Galena to meet with tribal leaders and representatives. I only made it to Galena. We had a U.S. Marshals plane, we had a U.S. Air Force plane, and still, because of the weather, we were not able to get to Huslia. Had there been a law enforcement emergency, law enforcement would not have been able to get there. That experience made clear to me the challenges that tribal communities face in a way that just reading a briefing paper could not possibly have done. I have also held on to conversations I had in October with the Justice Department's Tribal Nations Leadership Council. We discussed a wide range of public safety issues, including law enforcement, funding, litigation, policy initiatives, and specific public policy concerns, including the crime and the crisis of missing or murdered Indigenous persons, violence against women, and substance abuse. I look forward to continuing these conversations. In addition to my conversations, Department leadership has continued to engage regularly with our tribal partners. Deputy Attorney General Lisa Monaco spent important time in Oklahoma meeting with tribal representatives. Associate Attorney General Vanita Gupta also visited Alaska in October and went to Mille Lacs this summer. And Tracy Toulouse, Director of the Office of Tribal Justice, joined me and the Associate Attorney General on our trips. These visits have given all of us important frames of reference and personal connection to this work. As leaders of your governments and representatives of your citizens, your insights are crucial. I look forward to another year of working together as partners to create a safer future. Thank you.
Well, good morning, tribal leaders. My name is Morgan Rodman. I serve as Executive Director of the White House Council on Native American Affairs. Just a few quick housekeeping updates. A pleasure to have you all here. Hope you're having a great morning. So first update is that there are printed copies of the President's new executive order on federal funding reforms for tribal nations available at the back of the auditorium. So please seek those out so you can get a good look at the EO. Also, we'll have our second set of nation-to-nation talks with tribal leaders and agency leaders now. These sessions will last approximately 1 hour until lunch. On your badge, you have stickers. A green sticker means you will have a conversation with the Department of Justice in the Bison Bistro located in the basement. A blue sticker means you'll have a conversation with FEMA in the library across the hall. And an orange sticker means you'll have a conversation with the Social Security Administrator, a commissioner in the Rachel Carson room, which is also in the basement, just down the hall. You can take the stairs or the elevator. So those are the updates. I hope you're having a great summit, and we'll see you at the breakouts. Thanks.